thinking and same way of living, then people get tired. So there is no fresh blood. This is a lesson we all have to. How well we teach, without new people coming into our churches, we cannot survive. After a while, stagnation will come. So it is inevitable that, churches should have. You show any church where, for many years the same families are meeting, that church is in stagnation. That church cannot survive. Today or tomorrow it has to, close up, because, it is not conversions happening, it is only what you call the biological birth. The children and grandchildren continue. Children and grandchildren, they have no convictions. They only have the conveniences of the family. You ask the grandson, why are you in this church? Say that, well, my father and grandfather was there. They have not made any choice in their life. But the new believers always have commitment, because they have left something to grab it. They were taught something, therefore there is commitment and that one. So new believers must be there. Vibrancy is always for a new church. This is the reason why new movements and new denominations are more powerful. People are more excited there. You take any. The latest movement, for example, the charismatic movement, there is great excitement there. Charismatic, this is a new movement. After some day what happened, they will lose there. So somebody else has to come out from them. And this is the sort of thing that going on. So the Eastern churches were getting stagnant with old people, old thinking and old customs. But the West was totally different. Though theologically they were not well formulated, the new Germanic blood brought to the church a new fervor and life. In the East is a stagnant pool, the West is a militant sea. That's what one author said. You can always see new waves coming in the sea. But in the pool, the water is calm, but it is stagnant. Of course you have the comforts.
The missionary works, the Western churches, did they convert real, or it was...
But they were making people Christians. It's very difficult to say how much gospel they preached. But they will go and give them all baptism, and they make them to forsake their gods and goddesses and all that. They will accept Jesus Christ and the saints of the the Roman Catholics, the Roman Church, not the Catholic Church, not the Roman Church. Whatever system of worship and all they had, that they will be. So they will claim that we are now Christians. We are pagans, but now Christians. We used to worship such and such gods and goddesses, but now we worship Jesus Christ or, Mary or whoever were doing. So they were Christians. So their culture was different. Now they were cultured, uncultured people. So this sort of the East-West struggle was going on. The Western church, of course, as I said, though some new blood was coming, and the evils were more in the Western church. The simony was only in the Western church, for example. And also moral problems was in the Western church. The Western church was getting rich. So they had all the conveniences, modern conveniences. So Church of the Middle Ages is totally different from the Church of the Apostolic era. You cannot have any comparison. The believers were totally different. Are they born again? Do they ever use that phrase? This sort of. But conversion was taking place. The whole people were converted. And sin was rampant. Simony became normal. Many people were sick and tired of sinful ways of the churches. But what is the solution? What is the solution? Bishops and popes and priests were living like kings. And, the rich were enjoying life like anything. If there was any morality, it may be restricted to the poor people, because they did not have many avenues of that sort of luxury, sinful way of living. So the average people wanted a way out, somehow. But what is the way out? Finally they found a way out that is called asceticism, It is the extreme self-denial. People turned to spiritual meditation, forsaking normal life in the society. They will go away, leaving the society, forsaking marriage and everything. They will go to monasteries and they will stay there, eat very little, and they will be spending their time all in meditation and study and that sort of thing. It's happened in the Western Church, yes.
They are more legalistic, but whereas Eastern is more.
Yeah, the Eastern Church is, as I said, the mystical and all that studies and all that. They were cold and traditional, nothing. But however, the immorality factor was not major there. Morality factor was not, because the Eastern churches, the priests were marrying and everything, So there was family life and all. Western churches, the marriage was not permitted, and so there were more rooms for that sort of thing. So the Western church, those who were tired of the fleshly appetite of the people and the wrong way of life of the leadership, they turned it to asceticism. Yes. In the West, cloister life was developed, cloister life, that is a number of ascetics living together under one roof. So they call them cloister life. That's more called the monasticism. All the monks and the nuns abstained from marriage and they devoted their time for prayer, reading and meditation. So collectively they were doing. Well, in a sense that was good, you may say that, because on one side this worldliness was growing and nobody could control it, and bishops and priests and pope and all the landlords and all the rich people, they were having just fun. They were just having fun. And those who had some fear of God in their heart, they were so upset with this. So what's the solution? So they turned it to monasticism, and the cloister life came. And it's good that they devoted a lot of time for prayer and and study and meditation and all. Monasticism grew to monastic orders. Monastic order means union of a number of cloisters under one rule and common government. That's where the Augustinians, the Jesuits, and you have so many of those orders. So first they were all independent, every monastery was independent. There may be 50 or 100 monks there and nuns there, and now they united, kind of a union. So they under one strong leader, and they have taken different names. They have started such a common government and common rule. There may be a head of them. Some of them became very strong, counter pope, The Jesuits, the leader of the Jesuits, one time was called the Black Pope, he had more priests under him showing allegiance to him than the Pope. So he could even almost threaten the Pope, So some of these, even now, some of them are, the Jesuits are still very strong. I don't know which one is the most powerful of those orders, I don't know. The Augustinians closed down, Martin Luther, and they were all Augustinians, and so the Reformation in German was basically among the Augustinians, and so they all came out. So in the West, the monks did much service to the cause of civilization. When the barbarians waged attack in the West, the monasteries gave asylum to many people. The weary travelers found the monasteries as places of refuge and hospitals for the sick. So, these people were doing a lot of charitable work, and they were also doing a lot of educational work. So they were doing many good things, as far as the profit, there were many good things. And they were also advancing agriculture. That was another thing. The monasteries eventually had large holdings of lands. Large holdings. So they have livestock and dairy farms and chicken farms and this and orchards and all these things, and so they were advancing and they were contributing to the common welfare of the society as a whole. They were teaching people different arts. So monasteries were not devoted only to prayer and some meditations. They were also involved in other things. That was good.
Mother Teresa is said to be
Yes, she started the Sisters of Charity, you know. So they were basically, caring for the poor and the needy. So different ones have different emphasis. The Jesuits have, I think, Jesuits have emphasis on education, and some of the best institutes in even India are operated by the Jesuits. And there are different forgotten, so many different, the Vincentians, Jesuits, and there's so many.
The Saint Xavier's is another.
Yeah, there are many good institutions. Each one had a different. The Cambodians, for example, they are missions. They are missionary people. They give great emphasis for conversions and that sort of thing. So every monastic group have their own emphasis. There are like some NGO organizations devoted to maybe digging wells and establishing farmlands and all for the poor people. There were some of these people who were doing that one, and people were benefited it. The monasteries also advanced agriculture. However, monasticism was founded upon a false premise. That was a problem. It was a false premise. Those who chose for marriage, family, business or trade were considered inferior in morality, while those who have forsaken marriage and gone to monasteries, they were considered higher in morality, which was a false concept. Actually, marriage was not for immoral people. Marriage was, God ordained marriage for everybody. Actually, to avoid morality, marriage was. Therefore, married people were less spiritual than unmarried people. The premise was wrong. They were doing good things, but the premise was wrong. And when you start something on a wrong premise or foundation, you know that it's bound to go wrong. They propagated the wrong theology, that sinful heart is cleansed by withdrawing from the world. That was their theology. Sinful heart is cleansed by withdrawing from the world. See, Jesus Christ taught us that we should be the salt and the light of the world. It is not a light that is coming out from the celestial body. No. We have to live right among the people. We have to show them. We have to influence them. But these people said, no. You have to withdraw from them, because the sinful passions, will be flared up if you live among the people. No. Enoch walked with God and he had begat sons and daughters. Godly people walking with God, like Noah, he walked with God and he had sons. Abraham walked with God and he had sons. Great patriarchs and great saints were all married and they lived family life. Actually, family makes a person more holy. That definitely is true. You take the life of unmarried people, before their marriage and after their marriage. Usually after their marriage they settle down, they kind of mellowed down a little bit. The passions all go and their thinking even change, and that's naturally. So these people were propagating the wrong theology, wrong theology. However, as days went by, what happened? Monasteries became centers of corruption. They became centers of corruption. Many monks and nuns could not honor self-imposed ascetic life. Monasticism became breeding ground for all kinds of wickedness. Yes. Today, there are many stories about that sort of thing. The church began to feel that it was enough for ordinary Christians to observe certain outward ceremonies prescribed by the church. They should learn the Lord's Prayer and the Apostles' Creed. That's enough. They should confess their sins to the priest. All should participate in the Lord's Supper, which they believed to impart special grace. The church said to the ordinary people. Don't worry about. Don't worry about morality, don't worry about ethics. All that you have to do is what? You should learn the Lord's Prayer. Say it morning, afternoon, evening, so many times. And you also say the Apostolic Creed every Sunday in the church. And then you should confess your sins at least once a week. If not necessarily once a week, at least, they have certain days when you have to confess the sins and participate in the Lord's Supper. And, this was theirs. So, the church shifted to what we call sacramental Christianity. That's the beginning of sacramental Christianity. There is no reality, it's sacramental. You can live the way you want, but you go and confess it and then participate from the Eucharist, the Mass, and you say the Lord's Prayer. You're pretty good. What you do in your business, you're cheating people, it doesn't matter. In the evening you make sure you say the Lord's Prayer before going to bed. And on Sunday or whatever day you happen to go to church, you confess. So sacramental Christianity was, has replaced the real Christianity. In the East, of course sacraments there, but it's a different, it is a mystical. Anybody who wants to be godly is also a mystic. You cannot be a mystic unless you read and study, under some patriarchs and other mystic and all that. So they were producing theological books and, and different mystical writings, while the West was basically justifying all the corruptions even found in the monasteries. But not everybody was happy. Even some in the monasteries were really upset with this. They could not take it any longer. You can always find good people everywhere. That I have found that. Good people are in the Catholic Church, good people are in the Protestant Church. So you don't choose a church based upon where you can find good people. You have to choose a church based upon where you can find the right doctrine. That you cannot find everywhere. It's a doctrine and the life. They are like the two rail tracks. If the doctrine is not correct, what good is with your good life? It is like saying that, the train is in a very good shape, but the rails are in bad shapes. So the train will go, it will have an accident. And so, we need both. So the general decay happened to the church, begin the same tendency, begin to see the decay in the monasteries. This time also there was one nobleman. He was the Duke of Aquitaine. He was so sick and tired with these evils in the monasteries, so he founded a different type of monastery. It is called Cluny, C-L-U-N-Y. His name was, Aquitaine. He was the Duke of Aquitaine. That was his name. He may have had another name, but he was known as the Duke of Aquitaine. He was not a priest or anything. He was just a nobleman. And he was a godly man, From some perspectives, he was a godly man. He had seen these monasteries and what these monks and nuns were doing there and what sort of life they are. And he said, that's, these people say they are devoted for a godly life, and because they were saying that in the commonplace you cannot be spiritual, so you left everything, you went monasteries, you're freely practicing sin there. They don't have to fear anybody. It basically is that. They don't have to fear. In the community they have to fear somebody. There you don't have to fear anybody. So everybody was practicing that. So he founded a movement called the Cluny movement. Cluny monasteries. He started in eastern France in 910. In this monastery, rules of asceticism were to be followed strictly. The Cluny movement spread far and wide to other monasteries. For the next 200 years, the great Cluny reform was powerful, so powerful, that many genuine spiritual awakening happened in the Western Church. One time, it ruled over 2,000 monastic movements, the Cluny movement. You know, they made rules very strict, very strict. They cannot have any, there was no room for any sort of immorality. If anybody was found immoral, they were thrown out from there. So, you know, this Duke of Aquitaine was very powerful, very powerful. Gregory VII, who is a great pope known as the great, Hildebrand, he came out of the Cluny movement. There were some good popes, speaking from their perspective, some good popes came out of the Cluny movement. There was a great effort during this time to free the church from the hands of the evil rulers. Whether it was pope, whether it was bishops, whether it was noblemen, they were all controlling the church. And these men were basically bad people, very bad people. So there was an effort. The Cluny people wanted the church to be liberated from the hands of these evil people. So, they made rules and they tried to infiltrate into every aspect of the religious life. We need to note that the church in Rome played a great part in church history, because it's the most important church. Also, papacy was a gradual growth from elders to bishops to archbishops to pope. It was not just in one moment, no, it was just gradual. And also by the middle of the 10th, 11th centuries, papacy is totally corrupted and is brought to bondage to state. State was now controlling. Actually, kings were making popes. Nobody could be a pope without the king's support. The crown of the pope will be, placed on his head by the princes. So, actually, papacy was subservient to the interest of the princes. Then, as a reaction to low spiritual condition in the church, a religious revival in the form of a monastery at Cluny came into reality, though it was a place called Cluny, but the whole movement was called the Cluny movement. That is purifying the monastery. So what is this Cluny reform? The Cluny reform aimed to reform first the clergy, second the monks, and third the papacy. So this was their major. They wanted to reform the clergy, reform the monks, and reform the papacy. This reform really touched clergy, monks, and some popes. Many laymen also were challenged. In fact, the movement was started by a layman, the Duke of Aquitaine. He was not a clergy or he was not a monk. He was he was a duke, he was a ruler, but he was a layman, as far as religion was concerned. So papacy was so corrupt that at one time they had 3 popes, I mentioned, and one of them selling papacy and the other buying the papacy. The Cluny movement wanted to put an end to these evils. So they sought the help of Henry III, who was the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. This emperor was one of the laymen who came under the influence of the Cluny reform. He called a synod and deposed Sylvester III, one of the 3 popes. He also compelled Gregory III to resign himself and then banished him to Germany. And another synod was called and it deposed Benedict IX, the 3rd one. So all 3 popes, who fought for the office were now thrown out. So by Henry III. To get rid of the Italian corruption in Rome, Henry III made a German pope, Clement II. But this pope and the next one died very soon. They lived only for an year or 2, So Henry then appointed his cousin Bruno, the bishop of Toul, as Pope Leo IX. Leo IX was pope from 1049 to 1054. He was a strong, supporter of the Cluny movement. He was very energetic and full of reform. he was full of zeal and he began to work immediately. Leo the Ninth, he is, for the Roman Catholic Church, he is a good pope. The first thing Leo did was to make changes in the College of Cardinals. College of Cardinals were advisors to the Pope. When Leo the Ninth became Pope, he found that the school of Cardinals was, purely Romans. There was nobody other than a Roman in that one. Only Italians. Nobody else. So these cardinals represented the royal or the noble families of Italy. They were there to safeguard the interest of the noble family. The Pope should not make any rule that will affect the noble family, because whatever rule Pope makes, it is recommended usually by the school of cardinals. So these cardinals were there. So these cardinals represented the royals and nobles, and they controlled and corrupted papacy to their interest. And they were not sympathetic to the Cluny movement, because these cardinals knew that the Cluny movement, if get a chance, they will get rid of them. So the new Pope appointed cardinals who supported the Cluny reforms. He chose cardinals from various parts of the country. Actually, now he appointed cardinals from every part of the Roman Empire. Therefore, the school of cardinals is not only Italians. There were Italians and, there were from France and Germany and from, Ireland and from all parts of the world. He traveled all over the Western Europe, Western Roman Empire, and held synods. He enforced the Cluny reforms and maintained loyalty to Hugo, the founder of the Cluny movement. He emphasized 5 things: no marriage for priests, no sodomy, no buying of office, no church office without the approval of the clergy and the people. The cardinals alone cannot create. The people have to vote and approve it. So he has brought in some very important morally, the priests and the popes, and they were all known for sodomy. They were, basically even homosexuals. Basically, they were, and that's a problem. Even now, it plagues from time to time. You hear about things here and there. Only we hear in the tip of the iceberg. We don't hear. But this problem is not started here or there. When you prohibit marriage, something will happen, something or other. So Leo was a powerful pope, and he has made these rules, and it helped a whole lot. So we take a break with that right there.